Story 1. Killer Street Art in Toronto. The blood was still wet when Detective Sarah Chen found the fourth wall. 3 in the morning. Junction Triangle neighborhood. Toronto, this grittiest corner where American horror stories came to life in spray paint and shadow. The portrait stared back at her with eyes that seemed too real. Too alive. A middle-aged woman with graying hair and laugh lines. Someone, his mother. Someone, his wife. Painted in what looked like rust-colored acrylic but smelled like copper pennies. Sarah's partner, Detective Mike Rodriguez, was taking photos 50 feet away. He'd driven up from Buffalo 3 years ago, chasing a promotion and better health care. Now he wished he stayed in New York. Same style as the others? He called out. Exactly the same. Sarah pulled out her phone and compared the new portrait to the photos from the previous crime scenes. Same technique, same medium, same sick bastard. The pattern had started 2 weeks ago. A portrait would appear overnight on a wall in the junction. Always painted with incredible detail. Always featuring someone from the neighborhood. And always, within 72 hours, that person would turn up dead. The first victim had been Marcus Thompson, 34 years old, found his portrait on the side of a laundromat on Monday morning. By Thursday, Marcus was dead in his apartment. Heart attack, the coroner said. No signs of foul play, just stress and bad genetics. The second portrait showed Elena Vasquez, grandmother of 5. Her face appeared on the brick wall behind Tony's Pizza on Wednesday. Elena died Friday night, stroke in her sleep, natural causes. The third was David Park, 19 years old, college student. His portrait went up Saturday on the side of an abandoned warehouse. David overdosed Tuesday morning. Fentanyl? Accidental, according to the toxicology report. Now this, the fourth portrait, the fourth death sentence painted in blood. Sarah's phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Check your email. You need to see this. A concerned citizen. She opened her email app. One new message. No sender name. Just a video file attachment labeled, "The Artist at Work." Mike walked over as Sarah pressed play. The video was shaky, obviously shot from someone hiding behind a dumpster. Night vision quality, green and grainy. A figure in dark clothes stood in front of a blank wall. Male, medium height, wearing a hood that covered his face completely. In his hands, paintbrushes and what looked like mason jars filled with dark liquid. The man began to paint. Slow, deliberate strokes, building up layers of shadow and light. The portrait took shape quickly. Too quickly, like he painted this face 100 times before. Jesus Christ, Mike whispered. Look at his technique. This guy is a real artist. Professional level. Sarah kept watching. The hooded figure worked in complete silence. No music, no conversation, just the soft scrape of brush against brick. After 20 minutes, the portrait was finished. The same woman they found tonight. Every detail perfect, every wrinkle captured. The man stepped back to admire his work. Then he pulled out his phone and took a photo. The video ended. We need to find whoever sent this, Sarah said. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. The artist is Marcus Chen. Lives at 1247 Dundas Street West. Apartment 3B. But you were already too late. Sarah, his blood went cold. Marcus Chen, same last name as hers. Probably a coincidence. Chen was common enough. But still, they drove to Dundas Street in silence. The address led to a run-down apartment building squeezed between a Vietnamese restaurant and a check cashing place. The kind of building where people minded their own business and never called the cops. The front door was propped open with a brick. Broken security system. Sarah and Mike climbed to the 3rd floor, their footsteps echoing in the narrow stairwell. Apartment 3B. The door was unlocked. The smell hit them first. Sweet and metallic, like a slaughterhouse mixed with an art studio. Sarah drew her gun automatically. They found Marcus Chen in what used to be the living room. Now it was a workshop. An easel sat in the center surrounded by canvases, brushes, and dozens of mason jars filled with dark red liquid. Marcus himself was slumped in a chair facing the easel, dead for hours, judging by the smell. His wrists had been cut vertically. Professional job, deep cuts that followed the arteries. Very little chance of survival. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was the painting on the easel. A portrait of Detective Sarah Chen, perfect in every detail. Her brown eyes, her scar from the car accident in college. Even the small mole on her left cheek that she always tried to cover with makeup. Sarah, Mike said quietly, we need to get you out of here. Right now. She couldn't. To move. Couldn't. To look away from her own face staring back at her from the canvas. Painted in what she now knew was human blood. A note was taped to the bottom of the easel. Handwritten in shaky letters. The voices tell me who is next. I don't to choose. I just paint what they show me. Sarah Chen, you have 3 days. Mike grabbed her arm. Come on, leaving. But Sarah was studying the room more carefully now, looking at the other canvases stacked against the walls. Dozens of them, all portraits, all painted in the same rusty red medium. She recognized some of the faces. Marcus Thompson, Elena Vasquez, David Park, the first 3 victims, but there were others too. Faces she didn't recognize yet. Mike, look at this. Sarah pointed to a canvas near the window. That is Janet Morrison from the corner store. And that is Kevin Wu from the dry cleaner. These are people who are still alive. Mike examined the paintings. His face went pale. There has got to be 50 portraits here. Maybe more. Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Detective Chen. The voice was male, young, scared. My name is Tommy Nguyen. I sent you the video. I live across the street from Marcus, this building. I've been watching him for weeks. Where are you now? Sarah asked. Still across the street, watching your car. You need to get out of there. Marcus wasn't working alone. Sarah looked out the window. She could see a figure standing in the shadows across the street, talking on a phone. What do you mean he wasn't working alone? The voices he talked about. They were real. I've seen them. 3 people in white clothes. They come to his apartment every night. They tell him who to paint next. And Detective Chen? They coming back tonight. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. What time? Any minute now. They always come at 3:30 a.m. Sarah checked her watch. 3:28 a.m. Mike, we need to leave. Now. But Mike was staring at something on Marcus's desk. A journal. Pages and pages of handwritten notes. Listen to this, Mike said, reading aloud. Day 12. The voices are getting stronger. They showed me the detective today. Sarah Chen. She is going to find my workshop. She is going to see her own portrait. The voices say this is part of the plan. She needs to understand before she dies. Sarah's hands were shaking now. This felt like something from a creepypasta forum. Too weird to be real. But the blood on the paintings was real. The dead body was real. Her portrait was definitely real. Keep reading, she said. Mike flipped through more pages. Day 15. The voices explained the rules. Each portrait must be painted with the blood of the previous victim. The paintings don't kill people. They just mark them, show who the supernatural forces have chosen. I am not a murderer. I'm just an artist following orders. Supernatural forces? Sarah said. What kind of supernatural forces? Tommy's voice crackled through her phone. Detective. They were here. 3 people in white robes. Coming up the stairs to Marcus's apartment. Sarah looked toward the door. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow and deliberate. Coming closer. Mike was still reading from the journal. Day 20. I understand now. The voices Aaron, the ghosts. They were something older. Something that feeds on fear and death. They've been choosing victims in this neighborhood for decades. The street art is just the newest method. Before me, they used other artists. Other ways to mark their prey. The footsteps stopped outside apartment 3B. Sarah drew her gun and pointed it at the door. Mike did the same. They waited. Nothing happened. After 5 minutes, Sarah crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Tommy, are you still there? No answer. The call had ended. Sarah tried calling back. The number was disconnected. This is insane, Mike said. We're letting some urban legends spook us. Marcus Chen was obviously mentally ill. He killed those people somehow and made up this whole story about voices and supernatural forces. But Sarah wasn't convinced. She worked homicide for 8 years. She knew the difference between a crazy person and something genuinely unexplainable. How did he kill them? She asked. Marcus Thompson died of a heart attack. Elena Vasquez had a stroke. David Park overdosed. No signs of foul play on any of them. How does a street artist cause 3 different natural deaths? Mike didn't have an answer. Sarah's phone buzzed. Text message from another unknown number. Check the basement. Apartment B1. The real workshop is down there. They found the basement through a door behind the building, this laundry room. Apartment B1 was more of a storage unit than a living space. No windows, concrete walls, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. But the walls were covered with portraits. Hundreds of them, going back decades. Different artistic styles, different mediums, some painted in oils, some in watercolors, some in charcoal, but all featuring people from the Junction neighborhood. And at the bottom of each portrait, a date, the date the person died. The oldest painting was from 1987, a young man with kind eyes. Robert Kim, Died March 15, 1987. The newest was from last week. David Park. Died October 10, 2023. This has been going on for 36 years, Sarah whispered. Mike was examining the paintings more closely. Look at the signatures. Different artists. Marcus Chen only signed the most recent ones. Before him, it was someone named Lisa Rodriguez. Before her, James Wu. Going back decades. Sarah found a filing cabinet in the corner. Unlocked. Inside were folders for each artist. Photos, police reports, medical records. She opened Lisa Rodriguez's file. Born 1985. Died 2018. Cause of death. Suicide. Slit wrists. Found in an apartment on Dundas Street. James Wu, file. Born 1960. Died 2001. Cause of death. Suicide. Slit wrists. Found in an apartment on Dundas Street. The pattern went back for decades. Different artists. Same method of death. Same apartment building. They were not choosing the victims, Sarah said. They were choosing the artists. Using them to mark people for death. Then killing them when they served their purpose. Mike nodded grimly. And now they've chosen you. Sarah's phone rang again. She recognized the number this time. Police dispatch. Detective Chen, we have a situation. Multiple homicides in the junction. 3 bodies found in an alley behind Keel Street. All 3 victims match portraits that appeared on walls in the neighborhood over the past week. Sarah's blood went cold. The faces she'd seen in Marcus's apartment. The people who were still alive an hour ago. We were on our way, she said. The crime scene was chaos. 3 bodies. Janet Morrison from the corner store. Kevin Wu from the dry cleaner. And Tommy Nguyen, the young man who'd been helping them over the phone. All 3 had been killed in the same way. Single stab wound to the heart. Very precise. Professional. But there were no witnesses. No security cameras. No physical evidence except the bodies themselves. The forensics team found something else. Fresh portraits on the wall above where the bodies had been discovered. 3 new faces. People Sarah didn't recognize yet. The cycle is speeding up, she told Mike. It used to be 1 death every few days. Now it is 3 in one night. Mike was studying the new portraits. Sarah, look at this one. The 3rd portrait showed a young woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Someone Sarah had seen before but couldn't place. Then she remembered. The woman from the coffee shop. The barista who made her latte every morning on the way to work. Someone she'd talked to hundreds of times but never really noticed. Her name is Amy, Sarah said. Amy Chen. Mike stared at her. Chen? Another Chen? Sarah pulled out her phone and called the coffee shop. No answer. It was 4:30 in the morning. They wouldn't open for another 3 hours. She tried Amy's personal number. She'd gotten it last year when Amy had witnessed a purse snatching outside the coffee shop. Amy answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, Detective Chen? What's wrong? Amy, where are you right now? At home. Why? Is everything okay? I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don, to go outside. Don, to answer the door for anyone except me. I'm coming to get you. You, re-scaring me. What is happening? Sarah didn't know how to explain. How do you tell someone that supernatural forces have marked them for death? That their portrait has been painted in human blood by a dead artist who claimed to hear voices? Just trust me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Amy lived in a basement apartment 6 blocks from the coffee shop. Sarah and Mike drove there in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. The neighborhood felt different now, more threatening. Every shadow could hide someone in white robes. Every alley could contain another body. They parked outside Amy's building and Sarah called her again. No answer. Mike tried the front door. Unlocked. They found Amy in her kitchen, still alive, but barely conscious. Someone had injected her with something. Her pupils were dilated and her breathing was shallow. Amy, can you hear me? Sarah knelt beside her. Amy, his eyes focused with effort. 3 people, she whispered. White clothes. They said you sent them. Said you needed me to come with them. We need to get her to a hospital, Mike said. But as they lifted Amy from the floor, Sarah noticed something on the kitchen counter. A manila envelope with her name written on it. Inside was a single photograph. Sarah's own portrait from Marcus's easel. But someone had drawn a red X across her face. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. Time is up, detective. Tonight you join the other artists. Sarah's hands started shaking. Mike, we need to get out of here. All of us, right now. They carried Amy to the car, but as Sarah reached for the door handle, she felt someone watching her. She turned around. 3 figures stood at the end of the street, too far away to make out details. but she could see the white clothes. They weren't moving, just watching. Get in the car, she told Mike. They drove toward the hospital, but the white figures seemed to follow them, always staying the same distance behind, never getting closer, but never falling back either. This is impossible, Mike said. People they just appear and disappear like that. But Sarah was thinking about the journal entries, about 36 years of artists and victims, about a supernatural force that fed on fear and death. What if it's not about the art, she said. What if the portraits are just a way to focus the killing? Like a ritual, a way to channel whatever force is behind this. Mike glanced in the rearview mirror. The white figures were gone. Then how do we stop it? Sarah didn't have an answer, but she was starting to understand the real horror of their situation. She wasn't just marked for death. She was being recruited, chosen to be the next artist in a cycle that had been continuing for decades. The voices that Marcus heard? The same voices that had spoken to Lisa Rodriguez and James Wu and all the others. They were calling to her now, whispering at the edges of her consciousness. She could paint. She'd taken art classes in college, had natural talent that she'd never developed. The voices knew that. They arrived at Toronto General Hospital and rushed Amy to the emergency room. The doctor said she'd been injected with a powerful sedative, but she would recover. While Amy was being treated, Sarah and Mike went to the hospital cafeteria to wait. It was 5:30 in the morning. The place was nearly empty except for a few tired-looking nurses grabbing coffee between shifts. That's when Sarah saw him, Marcus Chen, sitting at a table in the corner, very much alive despite the fact that they found his body 6 hours ago. He looked up and smiled. "Hello, detective. I've been waiting for you." Sarah drew her gun, but Marcus held up his hands peacefully. "I'm not here to hurt you. I am here to explain, to help you understand what's really happening." "You dead?" Mike said. "We saw your body. That wasn't to me," Marcus said. "That was the previous artist, the man who came before me. We all look the same after a while. The voices change us, make us into what they need." Sarah kept her gun pointed at him, but she was listening. "Every 36 years, they choose a new neighborhood," Marcus continued. "A new hunting ground. The Junction was selected in 1987. Before that, it was Kensington Market. Before that, Chinatown. They move around to avoid detection." "What are they?" Sarah asked. "Old things. Hungry things. They existed since Toronto was founded. Maybe longer. They feed on death, but they need human agents to select and mark their prey. Artists who can capture a person, its essence, their soul." Mike was recording the conversation on his phone. Evidence, proof of what they were dealing with. "Why me?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled sadly. "Because you have the gift, the ability to see people clearly, to understand them. It's what makes you a good detective. It's also what makes you perfect for this job. I want to do it. You don't have a choice. The voices are already in your head. You can hear them now. To you? Whispering, showing you faces. People, people who deserve to die." Sarah's gun hand was trembling. Because he was right. She could hear something, faint whispers at the back of her mind. And she was seeing faces. The drug dealer who sold to kids outside the elementary school. The landlord who refused to fix heat in his buildings. The businessman who had been embezzling from the food bank. Bad people. People who deserved what was coming to them. "Fight it," Mike said. To listen to him. But Marcus was standing up now, walking toward them, and Sarah could see that his face was changing, becoming younger, more like her own features. "I'll start with 3 paintings," he said. "People the voices show you. People whose deaths will make the neighborhood safer. I'll tell yourself redoing good work. Cleaning up the streets. But eventually, you'll understand the truth." "What truth?" Sarah whispered. "That the voices don't care about good or evil. They just want death. And they'll use your sense of justice to get it. Just like they used mine. Just like they used all the others." The whispers in Sarah's head were getting louder, more insistent. She could see the faces more clearly now. Not just the bad people. Anyone, everyone, her neighbors, her coworkers. Mike said urgently. "We need to leave, now." But when Sarah looked around, the cafeteria was empty. Marcus was gone. The nurses were gone. Even the cashier had disappeared. They were alone. "This isn't real," Mike said. We hallucinating. Someone drugged us. Same stuff they gave Amy." Sarah wanted to believe that. But the voices in her head were telling her otherwise. Showing her Mike's portrait. How it would look painted in blood. How peaceful he would look when it was finished. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. 1247 Dundas Street West. Apartment 3B. Your supplies are waiting. Sarah looked at Mike, his concerned face, his kind eyes. He'd been her partner for 3 years. Her friend. Someone she trusted completely. But the voices were explaining how he would betray her. How he would try to stop her from fulfilling her purpose. How his death would be necessary to protect the work. Sarah, talk to me, Mike said. What are you thinking? She realized she was still holding her gun. Still pointing it in his direction. I'm thinking we should go back to Marcus's apartment, she said quietly. I need to see those supplies. Mike studied her face, looking for signs of whatever was happening to her. Okay, he said carefully. We'll go together. But first, let us check on Amy. Make sure she is okay. They went back to Amy's hospital room. She was awake now, sitting up in bed, looking much better. Detective Chen, Amy said with relief. Thank God you found me. Those people in white clothes. They said the strangest things. What kind of things? Sarah asked. They said I was chosen. That my death would inspire a great work of art. They showed me a painting, a portrait of me. It was beautiful, so detailed. Like the artist really understood who I was. Sarah felt the voices stirring in her mind again. Approving. Amy would make an excellent first subject. Her face had interesting angles. Good bone structure. She would look striking in oils. Amy, Sarah said slowly. Would you like to see the painting they showed you? Mike grabbed Sarah's arm. What are you doing? But Sarah was already thinking about composition. About how Amy's portrait would look hanging in the basement gallery with all the others. A masterpiece painted in her own blood. A testament to the voices. Wisdom in choosing victims. I know where it is, Sarah continued. The painting. Would you like to see it? Amy nodded eagerly. Yes, I do love to. Mike was backing toward the door, his hand moving toward his service weapon. Sarah, stop. Whatever you were thinking, Don, to do it. But Sarah was beyond listening to Mike now. The voices were too loud, too insistent. They were showing her exactly what she needed to do. How to get Amy out of the hospital. How to take her to the apartment. How to prepare her for the ritual. It's okay, Mike, Sarah said. You don't understand yet. But you will, after I paint your portrait. Mike drew his gun. Sarah, I'm not going to let you hurt Amy. Or anyone else. Sarah smiled. The same sad smile Marcus had worn in the cafeteria. You can stop the voices, Mike. They've been doing this for centuries. They always get what they want. The hospital room was changing around them. The walls were fading, being replaced by brick and mortar. The smell of paint and blood filled the air. They were back in the basement gallery, surrounded by hundreds of portraits. All the victims from 36 years of hunting. Amy was no longer in a hospital bed. She was sitting in a chair in the center of the room. Her hands were tied behind her back, but she didn't seem afraid. She was smiling, looking forward to being immortalized in paint. Sarah, this isn't real, Mike said desperately. We're still in the hospital. You're having some kind of breakdown. But Sarah could see the easel now. Fresh canvas stretched and ready. Brushes laid out in perfect order. Mason jars filled with crimson paint. Amy, it's blood. Still warm. Still alive. Paint me, Amy said softly. Make me beautiful. Sarah picked up a brush. It felt natural in her hand. Like she had been born to hold it. The voices were singing now. A harmony of whispers that filled the basement with music. They were pleased with her. Proud of how quickly she accepted her role. Sarah, please, Mike begged. Fight this. You're stronger than whatever force is controlling you. But Sarah was already making the first stroke. A line of deep red across the white canvas. Amy, his cheekbone, perfectly captured. The voices sang louder. Mike raised his gun and pointed it at Sarah. I want to let you become one of them. Sarah looked at him sadly. It's too late, Mike. I already am. The gunshot echoed through the basement. But when the smoke cleared, Mike was the one on the floor. Blood spreading from a wound in his chest. Sarah hadn't fired her weapon. The voices had protected her, just as they protected all the other artists over the decades. Mike was going to interfere, Amy said matter-of-factly. The voices done to like interference. Sarah nodded and returned to her painting. Mike, his death had provided fresh material. His blood was still warm, still rich with life and fear. She would paint Amy first. Then she would paint Mike. 2 masterpieces to begin her career as the newest artist in service to the voices. Hours passed. Sarah lost track of time as she worked. The painting took shape under her brush. Every detail perfect. Every shadow precisely placed. When she finished, Amy was dead, drained of blood, but her portrait lived on, captured forever in crimson paint. Sarah stepped back to admire her work. The voices whispered their approval. She had natural talent, perhaps the best artist they'd chosen in decades. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Excellent work. Now you understand. 3 more paintings by sunrise. The voices have shown you the faces. Sarah smiled and prepared 3 fresh canvases. She could see the faces clearly now. Her captain at the police station, the mayor of Toronto, a local news reporter who had been investigating the street art murders. All of them deserved to be immortalized. All of them had been chosen by forces older and wiser than human law. Sarah Chen picked up her brush and began to paint. Outside, the sun was rising over the junction. Another day was beginning in Toronto. People were going to work, living their lives, unaware that death was watching them from basement windows, unaware that their portraits might appear on walls tonight. The voices sang their ancient songs, and Sarah painted what they showed her. The cycle continued. Story 2. When to go from Walmart. The security monitor crackled at 2:17 a.m., showing something impossible walking down aisle 12. Jake Morrison had been staring at the screens for 6 hours straight, watching empty shelves and broken fluorescent lights flicker in the abandoned Walmart. Now his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. The figure moved wrong. Too tall, too thin, legs that bent at angles that shouldn't exist on a human body. Jake rubbed his eyes and looked again. The screen showed nothing but shadows between dusty merchandise and shopping carts covered in cobwebs. This place had been closed for 3 years, ever since the town of Flin Flon went bust and half the population moved south to Winnipeg. But the footsteps were real, heavy, deliberate, coming from somewhere deep in the store. Jake's partner, Tommy Reeves, was supposed to be doing rounds in the electronics section. They split up an hour ago to cover more ground. Standard procedure for overnight security at abandoned retail locations. The company that owned the building wanted to make sure vandals and copper thieves stayed out until they could find a buyer. Jake tried Tommy's radio. Static, nothing else. He checked the camera feeds again. Aisle 1 through 20, all empty. The pharmacy section, nothing. Customer service, clear. Even the employee break room where they set up their base camp showed only their coffee cups and Tommy's half-eaten sandwich. But the footsteps kept coming, getting closer. Jake had worked security for 8 years. Malls in Detroit, office buildings in Chicago, even a few shifts at an abandoned shopping center in West Virginia where locals swore they'd seen the Mothman. He heard every urban legend, every creepypasta story about supernatural creatures lurking in empty retail spaces. This felt different, more real, like American horror stories his grandfather used to tell about things that lived in the deep woods. Things that got hungry when winter lasted too long. The main lights had been shut off years ago. Only the emergency lighting still worked, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Jake grabbed his flashlight and headed toward the sound. The abandoned Walmart stretched out like a cavern. 40,000 square feet of empty retail space. Shelves still lined the aisles, but most of the merchandise had been cleared out when the store closed. What remained looked like the aftermath of a riot. Scattered boxes, broken glass, shopping carts turned on their sides. Jake's footsteps echoed in the vast space. The floor was polished concrete. Every sound bounced off the walls and came back distorted. He reached aisle 12, the pet supply section. Empty shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but dust and shadows. "Tommy," Jake called out. "You in here somewhere?" His voice echoed back from the far end of the store. No answer from Tommy. Jake checked his phone. No signal. The cell towers in this part of Manitoba were spotty even when the weather was good. Tonight, with snow falling outside, he might as well be on Mars. He was about to head back to the security office when he saw the writing on the wall. Fresh scratches in the drywall. Deep gouges that looked like they'd been made with claws. Or very sharp fingernails. The word was carved in letters 3 feet tall. Hungry. Jake's blood went cold. The scratches were new. He walked this aisle during his shift yesterday night. The wall had been clean then. He raised his radio again. "Tommy, if you can hear this, we need to meet back at base camp." Something is not right here. Still nothing but static. Jake turned to head back toward the front of the store. That's when he heard the growling. Low and rumbling. Like a bear. But bears didn't make sounds like that. This was something else. Something that had vocal cords designed for different purposes. The sound was coming from the grocery section, where the frozen foods used to be. Jake had 2 choices. He could run back to the security office, lock the door, and call for backup. or he could find Tommy and make sure his partner was okay. 8 years of security work had taught him to trust his instincts. His instincts were screaming at him to run, but Tommy was his responsibility. They worked together for 2 years. Tommy had kids, a wife, people who were counting on him to come home safe. Jake headed toward the grocery section. The freezers had been shut off when the store closed, but they were still there. Big glass-fronted units that used to hold ice cream and frozen dinners. Now they stood empty and dark, like open mouths waiting to be fed. The growling was louder now, more urgent. Jake could hear other sounds too. Scraping, like something being dragged across the floor. He found Tommy in the last freezer unit. Jake, his partner, was alive, but barely. His jaw hung at an impossible angle, broken in at least 3 places. Blood covered his security uniform. His eyes were wide with terror, but he couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. Tommy pointed toward the back of the store with a shaking hand. Toward the employee areas, the stockroom, the loading dock. Jake knelt beside his partner and checked his injuries. The jaw was bad, but not life-threatening if they could get him to a hospital. The problem was getting out of the store, because whatever had done this to Tommy was still here. Jake helped Tommy to his feet. His partner was conscious but unsteady. They have to move slowly, carefully. That's when Jake noticed the footprints. Bare feet, human-shaped, but wrong. Too long, too narrow. The toes ended in what looked like claws. The prints were pressed deep into the dust that covered the floor. Whatever made them was heavy, much heavier than a normal person. The prints led from the freezer toward the back of the store, toward the darkness where the loading dock waited. Jake, his grandfather, had been Ojibwe, born on a reservation in northern Minnesota. He told Jake stories about creatures that lived in the deep woods. Things that had once been human but had given in to hunger during the harshest winters. Cannibals who had been transformed by their crimes into something else. Something that was always hungry. Always hunting. Wendigo. Jake had always assumed those were just stories. Folk tales meant to keep kids from wandering into the forest alone. But looking at Tommy, his injuries, at the footprints in the dust, at the word carved into the wall, he was starting to reconsider. They needed to get out. Now, Jake put Tommy's arm around his shoulders and started walking toward the front of the store. Toward the exit, toward safety. But the footsteps were following them. Heavy, deliberate. Getting closer, Jake risked a look back. His flashlight beam caught something moving between the shelves. Tall, impossibly thin, moving in a way that suggested joints that bent in directions human joints shouldn't bend. Move faster, Jake whispered to Tommy. His partner tried, but the broken jaw was affecting his balance. Every step was agony. They were moving too slowly. The thing behind them was gaining ground. Jake made a decision. He helped Tommy lean against a shopping cart, then turned to face whatever was hunting them. His flashlight beam found it crouched between 2 shopping aisles. It had been human once. Jake could see that much. But hunger and cold and something else had changed it. Stretched it. The arms were too long. The fingers ended in black claws. The face was gaunt and pale, with sunken eyes that reflected light like an animal. But the worst part was that Jake recognized it. Frank Peterson, the old manager who run this Walmart for 15 years before it closed. Jake had seen his photo in the employee break room. Same face, just thinner. Hungrier. Frank should have been dead. The official story was that he disappeared into the Manitoba wilderness after the store closed. Search and rescue had looked for weeks but never found a body. Most people assumed he'd gotten lost in the woods. Died of exposure. But Frank wasn't dead. He was something else now. Something that lived in the abandoned store and fed on whatever it could catch. The Wendigo stood to its full height, 7 feet tall, maybe 8. Its head nearly touched the ceiling tiles. Jake raised his flashlight like a weapon, knowing it would be useless. Stay back. I am armed. He wasn't armed. Security guards at retail locations weren't allowed to carry weapons. Company policy. Frank tilted his head like a dog hearing a strange sound. When he opened his mouth, Jake could see teeth that had been filed to points. Or maybe they'd grown that way naturally as part of the transformation. Hungry, Frank said. His voice was like gravel in a blender. So hungry. Jake backed away, keeping himself between the Wendigo and Tommy. Frank, I know you. Ree's still in there somewhere. Fight this. You don't have to do this. But Frank was beyond reasoning, beyond human emotion. He was pure hunger now. A predator that had found prey. The Wendigo lunged forward with impossible speed. Jake dove sideways, pulling Tommy with him. They crashed into a display of clearance items. boxes scattered everywhere. Tommy cried out in pain as his broken jaw hit the floor. Frank landed where they'd been standing a second before. His claws scraped against the concrete, leaving deep gouges. Jake pulled Tommy behind a row of shopping carts. They needed somewhere to hide, somewhere defensible. The security office was too far away, but maybe the employee break room. It had a heavy door, a lock. They crawled between the aisles, trying to stay quiet. Jake could hear Frank searching for them, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. Following their scent, the break room was 50 feet away. They'd have to cross open ground to reach it. Jake looked at Tommy. His partner was fading, losing blood, going into shock. They were running out of time. "When I say go, you run for the break room," Jake whispered. "Don, to look back." "Don, wait for me." Tommy shook his head weakly. He wasn't going to abandon his partner. That's an order," Jake said. "Your kids need you to survive this." A shopping cart crashed to the floor somewhere behind them. Frank was getting closer. "Go," Jake said. Tommy stumbled toward the break room. Jake waited 3 seconds, then stepped out into the open. "Hey, Frank," he shouted. "Over here." The Wendigo spun toward him. Those pale eyes locked onto Jake, his face. Frank smiled, showing his pointed teeth. Jake ran in the opposite direction from Tommy, leading the creature away from his injured partner, toward the back of the store, toward the loading dock where this nightmare had probably started. Frank followed, moving with that unnatural speed. But Jake had an advantage. He knew the layout of the store. He memorized every aisle during months of security shifts. He could navigate in the dark. Jake reached the employee section and ducked through a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The stockroom stretched ahead of him, tall shelves filled with leftover merchandise, boxes stacked to the ceiling. He could hear Frank behind him. Closer now, the Wendigo's claws clicked against the concrete floor like a dog's nails. Jake found what he was looking for in the corner of the stockroom. A fire axe mounted behind glass. He smashed the case with his flashlight and grabbed the weapon. It wasn't much against a 7-foot monster, but it was better than nothing. Frank appeared in the doorway of the stockroom. He had to duck to fit through the opening. In the confined space, he looked even more massive, even more threatening. "You can't run forever," Frank said. His voice echoed off the walls. "I can smell your fear. Tastes like copper pennies." Jake raised the axe. "Maybe not, but I can try to take you with me." Frank laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think you were the first security guard they killed?" "There have been others. Night shift workers, maintenance crews. They all thought they could fight." That explained the missing persons reports Jake had heard about. 3 people who disappeared near the abandoned Walmart over the past year. The police had assumed they left town looking for work. But they never left. They'd become food. Frank lunged forward. Jake swung the axe with everything he had. The blade caught the Wendigo in the shoulder, biting deep into flesh and bone. Frank screamed, not in pain, but in rage. Black blood poured from the wound. It smelled like rotting meat. Jake pulled the axe free and swung again. This time Frank was ready. He caught the handle in one massive hand and yanked it away from Jake. The Wendigo's other hand wrapped around Jake's throat. Those claws dug into his skin. Jake could feel his windpipe being crushed. "You taste different," Frank whispered. His breath smelled like death. Stronger, more afraid. Fear makes the meat tender. Jake's vision was starting to fade. He was running out of air, out of time, but Tommy was safe. That had to count for something. His hand found something in his pocket. His phone. No signal, but the screen was bright. LED flashlight bright. He turned on the phone's flashlight app and shined it directly into Frank's eyes. The Wendigo screamed and stumbled backward. The bright light hurt him, confused him. Jake fell to his knees, gasping for air. His throat felt like it had been sandpapered. Frank was clawing at his eyes, temporarily blinded. This was Jake's chance. He grabbed the fire axe and ran toward the loading dock. Maybe he could get outside, find help, call for backup. The loading dock door was locked, but Jake found the emergency release. The heavy metal door rolled up with a grinding sound. Cold Manitoba air rushed in. Snow was falling harder now. The parking lot was covered in white, but Jake could see lights in the distance. The highway, civilization. He was about to run for it when he remembered Tommy. His partner was still trapped in the break room, injured, helpless. If Jake left now, Frank would kill Tommy as soon as he recovered from the light blindness. Jake couldn't live with that. He turned back toward the store. Frank was waiting for him. The Wendigo's eyes had adjusted to the light. He was smiling again. Loyalty. Frank said. How touching. Your friend is already dead. You know, I can smell his blood from here. Getting weaker by the minute. Jake raised the axe. They got nothing left to lose. They fought in the loading dock doorway. Jake swinging the axe, Frank slashing with his claws. Both of them bleeding, both of them desperate. Jake managed to land several hits. The Wendigo was tough, but not invincible. Each cut slowed him down, made him more cautious, but Jake was getting tired. His arms ached from swinging the heavy axe. His throat was damaged from being choked. He couldn't keep this up much longer. Frank seemed to realize this. He stopped attacking and started stalking, waiting for Jake to make a mistake. You know what the worst part is? Frank said conversationally, I used to be like you, trying to help people, trying to do the right thing. Then the store closed. The town died. Everyone left. Everyone except me. Jake kept the axe ready, watching for an opening. I stayed because this place was my life, Frank continued. 30 years I worked here. Started as a stock boy. Worked my way up to manager. This store was everything to me. The Wendigo circled Jake like a shark. Patient. Predatory. When the company shut us down, they offered me a transfer to Winnipeg. A desk job. I said no. This was my home. My territory. I'd rather die than leave. Frank's eyes gleamed in the darkness. So I did die. In a way, the old Frank Peterson starved to death in these aisles. What is left is something else. Something that belongs here. Something that protects this place from intruders. Jake was backing toward the store, this interior. Away from the exit. Away from safety. The hunger started slow, Frank said. Just missing meals, then missing days. By the time the first security guard showed up, I was ready to eat anything. Anyone. They were back in the main store now, surrounded by empty shelves and broken dreams. You taste different, though, Frank said. Most people who come here are thieves, drug addicts, people with nothing to lose. But you came here to help your friend. There's something pure about that. Something I haven't tasted in years. Jake, his back hit something solid. He'd been backed against the customer service counter. Nowhere left to run. Frank raised his claws for the killing blow. That's when the lights came on. All of them. Every fluorescent fixture in the store blazing to life simultaneously. The sudden brightness was blinding after hours of darkness. Frank screamed and fell to his knees. His hands covered his eyes. The light was hurting him, burning him. Jake looked around in confusion. Who had turned on the power? Tommy limped out from behind the customer service counter. He was holding a flashlight in one hand and what looked like a circuit breaker panel remote in the other. Emergency lighting system, Tommy said through his broken jaw. The words were slurred but understandable. Found it in the office. Figured it might help. Frank was writhing on the floor now. His pale skin was actually smoking where the fluorescent lights hit it. Whatever he'd become, direct light was poison to him. Jake raised the fire axe one last time. This is for everyone you killed. The axe came down hard. Frank Peterson, the Wendigo of Walmart, stopped moving. Jake and Tommy limped toward the exit together. Tommy's jaw needed medical attention. Jake, his throat felt like hamburger. But they were alive. They called for backup from Jake's truck in the parking lot. Paramedics, police, even a team from the provincial wildlife department to examine what was left of Frank Peterson. By dawn, the abandoned Walmart was swarming with investigators. Jake told his story a dozen times. Each time, it sounded less believable, even to him. The official report listed Frank Peterson as a vagrant who had been living in the abandoned store. Mental illness and malnutrition had made him violent. Dangerous. The investigators found evidence of at least 3 other victims. Bones in the freezer section. Personal effects in the employee break room. But they never mentioned the word carved into the wall. Hungry. Someone had cleaned it off before the investigators arrived. Jake quit security work after that. Found a desk job in Winnipeg. Something safe. Something that didn't involve night shifts in abandoned buildings. But sometimes, on winter nights when the snow was falling hard, he still thought about Frank Peterson. About what hunger could do to a person. About how thin the line was between civilization and something else. And sometimes, when he drove past abandoned retail stores, Jake wondered what might be living inside. What might be waiting in the darkness between empty shelves. The Walmart in Flin Flon was demolished 6 months later. The company cited structural damage and vandalism. But Jake knew the real reason. Some places were too hungry to be left standing. Tommy recovered from his injuries and went back to security work. Different company, day shifts only. He never talked about what happened that night. But sometimes Jake caught him staring at empty buildings with a haunted expression. They stayed in touch, called each other on the anniversary of the incident, made sure they were both still human, still themselves. because they learned something that night in the abandoned Walmart. Something about what people could become when they were pushed too far. When they were left alone with their hunger for too long. The Wendigo wasn't just a monster from old stories. It was a warning, a reminder of what waited in the empty spaces of civilization. And there were a lot of empty spaces these days. Abandoned malls, closed factories, empty office buildings, all of them potential homes for things that used to be human. Jake tried not to think about that too much. But on cold winter nights, when the wind howled through the streets of Winnipeg, he sometimes heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. He'd check the locks on his doors, turn on every light in his apartment, and remind himself that he was safe now. Fed, warm, human, but the hunger was always there, waiting in the darkness, ready to transform anyone who let it in. The Wendigo from Walmart was dead, but there were other stores, other managers who lost everything, other people pushed beyond their breaking point. Jake had seen what hunger could create, and he knew it was only a matter of time before he saw it again. The only question was whether he'd recognize it before it was too late, or whether he'd become it himself. Story 3. Tunnel of Crying Children. A Night in the Matrix. The live stream was at 12,000 viewers when the walls started breathing. Madison Chen held her phone steady, watching the comments flood in faster than she could read them. Her followers wanted supernatural content. They wanted real American horror, and the screaming tunnel near Niagara Falls was supposed to deliver exactly that. Okay guys, we're about to enter the most haunted tunnel in Canada, Madison said to her phone camera. Legend says if you light a match in the middle of this tunnel, you'll hear a little girl screaming. She burned to death here like 100 years ago. Her 3 friends stood behind her in the frame. Tyler from Phoenix, filming his own TikTok for his 2 million followers. Ashley from Denver, live streaming to Instagram. And Marcus from Detroit, recording everything on his professional camera for his YouTube horror channel. 4 content creators from different corners of America, all chasing the same thing. Viral content. The kind of scary video that would get shared across every social media platform and rack up millions of views. This is so stupid, Ashley muttered, but she kept her camera rolling. We're gonna get arrested for trespassing. No way, Tyler said. I researched this. The tunnel is on public land. Besides, everyone does this challenge. It's like a rite of passage for horror influencers. Madison had seen the videos. Dozens of them. Content creators from all over North America making the pilgrimage to this crumbling railway tunnel. Most came away with disappointing footage. A few matches lit in the darkness. Some nervous laughter. Maybe a weird echo that could pass for a ghostly voice if you squinted your ears. But Madison had done her homework. She found the creepypasta forums where people shared the real stories. The videos that never made it online. The content creators who'd gone into the tunnel and come out different. Changed. The tunnel is only 300 feet long, Madison said, still live streaming. I'll be in and out in 20 minutes. But guys, if you see something crazy happen, make sure you re-recording. This could be the content that changes everything. The screaming tunnel looked innocent enough from the outside, just a stone archway built into a hill near the railroad tracks. During the day, it probably looked like any other piece of old infrastructure. But at midnight, with fog rolling in from the Niagara River, it felt like the mouth of hell. Madison led the way into the tunnel. Her phone, its flashlight cut through the darkness ahead. The walls were old stone blocks, covered in decades of graffiti. Names, dates, crude drawings, the usual garbage that accumulated in places where teenagers came to prove their courage. But some of the graffiti looked older, stranger, symbols that didn't match any language Madison recognized. And words carved so deep into the stone they looked like they'd been made with claws instead of knives. They took my sister. The children are still here. Dawn, to listen to the whispers. Okay, this is already creepy as hell, Tyler said, panning his camera across the graffiti. My chat is going crazy. People are saying this place is legit haunted. They were about 50 feet into the tunnel when Madison noticed the temperature drop. Not just cold, freezing. Her breath came out in white puffs that shouldn't exist in late September. Anyone else feel that? She asked her viewers. It just got like 30 degrees colder in here. Marcus was checking his camera settings. My equipment is acting weird. The audio levels are all over the place. Like there's some kind of interference. Ashley had stopped walking. She was staring at something on her phone screen. Guys, look at this. My Instagram live is showing things that Aaron did there. Madison looked over Ashley's shoulder at the phone screen. The live stream showed the four of them standing in the tunnel. But there were other figures in the background. Shadowy shapes that looked like children, standing along the walls, watching. It's not possible, Madison said. There's nobody else here. But when she looked around with her eyes instead of through the camera, the tunnel was empty. Just the four of them and their phone lights cutting through the darkness. Tyler was reading his TikTok comments aloud. Someone just said they can see kids behind us. Another person says there's writing appearing on the walls that we can see. This is insane. Madison felt her heart rate spike. This was better than anything she'd hoped for. Real supernatural activity caught on camera. Thousands of witnesses watching live. This video would make her career. They continued deeper into the tunnel. Madison kept up a steady stream of commentary for her viewers, but she was having trouble concentrating. The air felt thick, heavy, like breathing soup, and there was a sound, barely audible at first, a soft whimpering that seemed to come from the walls themselves. You guys hear that? Marcus asked. He was holding his professional camera, but his hands were shaking. Sounds like crying. The whimpering got louder, more distinct. It was definitely crying. Children crying. Multiple voices, coming from everywhere at once. Madison's livestream chat was exploding. Viewers were posting screenshots showing dozens of child-shaped shadows surrounding the group. But Madison still couldn't see them with her naked eyes. This is impossible, Ashley whispered. Cameras done to show things that aren't there. That's not how technology works. But Tyler was staring at his phone screen in fascination. Unless we're seeing things that are there, but operating on a different frequency. Like how some animals can see ultraviolet light. Maybe these kids exist in a spectrum we can't normally perceive. Madison reached the center of the tunnel. According to the legend, this was where she was supposed to light a match and hear the ghost of the little girl who burned to death. But the crying was already so loud she could barely think. She pulled out a book of matches, the old-fashioned kind, wooden matches that would burn bright and hot. Okay, everyone, she said to her camera. This is it, the moment of truth. Madison struck a match. The flame flared up, casting dancing shadows on the tunnel walls. That's when she saw them. Not on her phone screen. With her actual eyes. Children, dozens of them, pressed against the walls like they were trapped inside the stone itself. Their faces were pale and gaunt. Their clothes looked like they were from different time periods. Some wore modern clothes. Others looked like they were from the 1950s. A few were dressed like pioneers from the 1800s. All of them were crying. Holy shit, Tyler breathed. Tell me you guys are seeing this. Madison's match burned down to her fingers. She dropped it with a gasp. The flame went out, but the children remained visible, glowing with their own faint light. The crying stopped, replaced by whispers. Dozens of young voices all speaking at once. Stay with us. Don, leave us alone. Stay with us forever. Madison's phone was still live streaming, but she could barely hold it steady. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. We need to go, Ashley said. Right now. This is way beyond what we signed up for. But the children were moving now, peeling themselves away from the walls, stepping toward the group with jerky, unnatural movements. Run, Marcus said quietly. Everyone run. They bolted toward the tunnel entrance. Madison kept her phone camera pointed ahead, still live streaming to her terrified audience. The comments were a blur of capital letters and scared emojis. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Stay with us forever. Don, leave us alone. Stay with us forever. Madison could see the tunnel entrance ahead. Moonlight and fresh air. Safety. But it felt like they were running through molasses. Every step was harder than the last. Tyler stumbled and fell. His phone skittered across the ground, its light spinning wildly. When he tried to get up, one of the ghost children was standing right in front of him. A little girl in a burned dress. Her hair was singed short. Her eyes were black holes in her pale face. What's your name? The girl asked Tyler. Tyler. He answered automatically. The girl smiled. Tyler from where? Tyler from Phoenix. What is Phoenix? Tyler opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. His face went blank, confused. I done, he said slowly. I done. Remember. Madison grabbed Tyler's arm and pulled him to his feet. They ran the last 50 feet to the tunnel entrance and burst out into the night air. All four of them stood gasping in the parking area outside the tunnel. Madison was still live streaming, but her viewer count was dropping rapidly. People were logging off, too scared to keep watching. Everyone okay? Madison asked. Ashley and Marcus nodded. but Tyler was staring at the ground with a lost expression. "Tyler," Madison said. "You all right?" "I'm fine," Tyler said. "Just, where are we again?" "The Screaming Tunnel, near Niagara Falls, in Canada." Tyler nodded slowly, but Madison could see the confusion in his eyes. Like he was trying to remember something important, but couldn't quite grasp it. They drove back to their hotel in silence. Madison had ended her live stream, but she kept thinking about the viewer comments. People had seen things on camera that defied explanation. Ghost children, messages appearing on walls, supernatural phenomena captured in real time. This was exactly the kind of content that would make them all famous. The kind of American horror story that would get shared millions of times across every platform. But something was wrong with Tyler. Back at the hotel, they sat in Madison's room reviewing their footage. Tyler's TikTok video was already going viral. 2 million views in 3 hours. The comments were full of people claiming they could see ghost children in the background. Ashley's Instagram Live had been saved by her followers. The video clearly showed shadowy figures surrounding the group. Things that hadn't been visible to their naked eyes. Marcus, his professional camera, had captured the best footage. High-definition video of the ghost children. Audio of their whispers. Proof of supernatural activity that would convince even the biggest skeptics. "This is incredible," Madison said. We're gonna be famous. This is the kind of content that changes everything." But Tyler wasn't celebrating. He was staring at his phone with a confused expression. "Guys," he said slowly, "I'm looking at my profile. It says I'm from Phoenix. But I don't remember Phoenix. I don't remember anything about living there." Ashley and Marcus exchanged worried looks. "What do you remember?" Ashley asked. Tyler thought for a long moment. "I remember being a content creator. I remember having followers. I remember coming here with you guys. But before that, it's all blank. Like my life started 3 hours ago." Madison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "The ghost girl asked you where you were from. You said Phoenix. Then she asked what Phoenix was. And I couldn't answer," Tyler finished. "Because after she asked, I couldn't remember." They spent the next hour trying to help Tyler remember his hometown. They showed him photos of Phoenix on Google, videos of the desert, maps of Arizona. Nothing triggered any recognition. "It's like that part of his memory got erased," Marcus said. "Or stolen." Madison thought about the whispers in the tunnel. "Stay with us forever." The ghost children weren't trying to physically trap them. They were taking pieces of their identities, their connections to the outside world. If Tyler couldn't remember where he came from, how could he ever really leave? "We need to research this," Madison said. "Find out if this has happened to other people." She opened her laptop and started searching. Screaming Tunnel memory loss. Niagara Falls ghost children amnesia. Content creators forgot hometown. The results were scattered across obscure forums and buried Reddit threads. Stories from other influencers who visited the tunnel. Most of them dismissed as creepypasta fiction or hoaxes. But the pattern was consistent. Content creators would enter the tunnel. They'd capture amazing supernatural footage. They'd become famous. But they'd always lose something in the process. A memory, a relationship, a piece of their identity. Madison found a thread from 2 years ago. A YouTuber named Jake Morrison had visited the tunnel with his girlfriend. They'd gotten incredible footage of ghost children. Their video had 20 million views. But Jake, his girlfriend, couldn't remember her own mother's name after they left the tunnel. She'd forgotten her entire family, her past, everything that connected her to her life before that night. "The children don't want to hurt us," Madison read aloud. "They want us to join them, but they take us physically. So they take pieces of our identity instead, our connections to the living world. Eventually, we forget everything except the tunnel. And then we go back." Tyler was listening with growing horror. "You think I'll forget more? Like everything?" Madison didn't want to answer that question. But the evidence was clear. Other content creators had lost more and more memories over time. Some had returned to the tunnel again and again, drawn by something they couldn't explain. Eventually, they stopped making content altogether, stopped responding to messages, just disappeared. "We need to get Tyler home," Ashley said. "Back to Phoenix. Maybe being in familiar surroundings will help him remember." But Tyler shook his head. "I don't want to go to Phoenix. I don't even know what Phoenix is. The only place that feels real to me is the tunnel." Madison felt her blood go cold. It was already starting. Tyler was being drawn back. "No," she said firmly. We're not going back there. Ever." But even as she said it, Madison could feel the pull herself. The tunnel calling to her. She had the best supernatural footage of her career. Proof of real ghosts, real horror, the kind of content that would make her famous beyond her wildest dreams. All she had to do was go back, just once more, to get better footage, to interact with the ghost children, to understand what they really wanted. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt exciting, tempting. Madison realized she was in trouble. Over the next few days, their videos exploded across social media. Tyler, as TikTok hit 50 million views. Ashley, as Instagram Live was shared by every major horror account. Marcus, his YouTube video was featured on news websites as proof of supernatural activity. They were famous, rich, successful beyond their wildest dreams. But Tyler's memory kept getting worse. He forgot the names of his family members, his favorite foods, his childhood pets. Everything that made him Tyler was slowly disappearing. And Madison found herself thinking about the tunnel constantly, dreaming about the ghost children, planning her return visit. She wasn't the only one. Ashley had started researching the tunnel's history obsessively. Marcus was editing new videos using their footage, but each edit seemed to draw him deeper into the mystery. They were all being pulled back. Madison tried to resist. She flew home to Los Angeles and threw herself into other projects. But nothing satisfied her. Regular content felt boring, fake. She detested real supernatural horror, and everything else paled in comparison. 3 weeks after their tunnel visit, Madison booked another flight to Buffalo. She told herself she was just going to do follow-up content, interview locals, research the history. But she knew the truth. She was going back to the tunnel. Tyler was already there when she arrived. He'd been camping in the parking area for a week, waiting for something he couldn't explain. He barely recognized Madison, but he smiled when he saw her. "You came back too," he said. "I knew you would." They recalling us. Ashley and Marcus showed up the next day. None of them were surprised to see each other. It felt inevitable, like they'd always been meant to return. "Just one more video," Madison told herself as they approached the tunnel entrance. "Just to see what happens." But she knew that was a lie. This wasn't about content anymore. This was about something deeper. Something that had its claws in all of them. The ghost children were waiting inside the tunnel. More of them this time. Dozens, maybe hundreds. All different ages and time periods. All with the same hungry eyes. "You came back," the little girl in the burned dress said to Tyler. "We knew you would." Tyler nodded happily. He looked more at peace than Madison had seen him since they first visited the tunnel. "What's your name?" the girl asked him. Tyler opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. His face went blank. "I don't remember," he said. "I don't remember having a name." The ghost children smiled. They reached out with pale hands and touched Tyler's face. His arms, his chest. Where they touched, he began to glow with the same faint light as them. "Tyler!" Madison screamed, but her voice sounded far away, muffled. Tyler looked at her with confusion. Who was Tyler? He was forgetting his own name, his own identity, becoming one of them. Madison tried to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The tunnel walls were breathing around her, pulsing like a living thing. And the whispers were back. "Stay with us forever. Don't leave us alone. Make content with us forever." Madison realized the horrible truth. The ghost children weren't random victims. They were content creators, influencers, people who had come to the tunnel seeking fame and fortune. People who had been trapped by their own ambition. The little girl in the burned dress had probably been one of the first. Maybe a child performer from the early days of film, or a young actress from vaudeville. Someone who died seeking fame and been trapped here ever since. All the others had followed the same path, drawn to the tunnel by stories of supernatural activity, seduced by the promise of viral content, and then trapped forever in an endless cycle of performance for an audience that would never be satisfied. "We make the best content," the ghost children whispered. "Horror that is always real. Fear that never ends. Audiences that stay forever." Madison looked at Ashley and Marcus. They were both glowing now, fading, becoming translucent like the other ghost children. "Join us," Ashley said, but her voice sounded different. Younger, like a child's voice. "Make content forever." Madison felt herself beginning to fade too. Her memories of Los Angeles were getting fuzzy. Her apartment, her cat, her family. All of it seemed less important than staying here in the tunnel with her new friends. She pulled out her phone one last time. Still live streaming to an audience of millions. People all over the world watching her transformation in real time. "If you watching this," she said to the camera, Dawn, to come to the screaming tunnel. Dawn, to try to recreate this content. It's not worth it. The fame ISN, too worth it. But even as she said the words, Madison knew they would have the opposite effect. Her warning would become part of the legend, part of the challenge. More content creators would come seeking the same experience. And the ghost children would be waiting. Madison's phone slipped from her fingers as she fully transformed. Her last coherent thought was about view counts. How many people were watching? How viral this video would become. Even as she died, she was still thinking about content. The tunnel fell silent. 5 new ghost children stood among the dozens of others, all of them glowing with pale light, all of them waiting for the next group of content creators to find them. Outside, Madison's phone lay in the parking area, still live streaming to an audience that was growing by the minute. The comments were full of people planning their own visits to the tunnel. The cycle would continue, and somewhere in the digital realm, the video would live forever. Shared and reshared across every platform, inspiring countless imitators, drawing more and more content creators to their doom. The ghost children smiled in the darkness. They would never run out of new content to make. Story 4. Library ghost with hungry books. The books were screaming. Maya Chen pressed her palms against her ears, but the sound cut through flesh and bone straight into her brain. Pages flapping like dying birds. Spines cracking like breaking necks. The entire 4th floor of the Angus L. MacDonald Library shook as hundreds of volumes hurled themselves from their shelves. She crouched behind a study desk, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. This was her 3rd night hiding in St. Francis Xavier University's library after closing time. The first 2 nights had been quiet. Normal. She almost convinced herself the stories were just creepypasta nonsense spread by stressed-out students. But tonight, the hunger had awakened. A heavy book slammed into the wall inches from her head. Maya glimpsed the title as it fell. Lives of the Sacred Sisters, a chronicle of sacrifice. The pages flipped open on their own, revealing photographs of nuns from the 1940s. Their eyes had been scratched out with something sharp. The screaming stopped. In the sudden silence, Maya heard footsteps. Soft shoes on carpet. Getting closer. She'd come here to research her senior thesis on haunted institutions in maritime Canada. What she found instead was something that wanted to add her name to a very different kind of academic record. The footsteps stopped directly behind her hiding spot. You shouldn't be here after hours, dear. The voice was elderly, female, with the kind of authority that came from decades of shushing students. Maya didn't turn around. She learned that much from 2 weeks of supernatural encounters. Never look directly at them until you understand what they want. I'm just studying, Maya whispered. Oh, I know exactly what you re-studying, the voice replied. The question is whether you ready to become part of the collection. Maya's laptop sat open on the desk above her head. The screen showed her research notes about the library's history. St. Francis Xavier had been founded by Catholic priests in 1853. The library building dated to 1962, built on the site of an older convent that had burned down in 1943. 47 nuns had died in that fire. According to the official records, it was an accident, faulty wiring in the basement, but Maya had found newspaper clippings from the time that told a different story. Whispers about Sister Marguerite Fontaine, the head librarian, who had been found in the convent's book vault after the fire. Her body was unmarked by flames, but every book around her had been reduced to ash. The police report, buried in university archives, was even more disturbing. Sister Marguerite's mouth and nose had been packed full of paper. Not ash, fresh paper, as if she tried to eat the books while she died. Maya Chen, the voice said, pronouncing her name with careful precision. Age 21. Senior year, double major in history and religious studies. From Portland, Oregon. Parents divorced when you were 12. No siblings, no boyfriend currently. Maya's blood turned to ice water. She hadn't told anyone at the university those personal details. You've been asking questions about things that should stay buried, the voice continued. Disturbing the peace of the faithful departed. A photograph slid across the floor and stopped directly in front of Maya's hiding spot. Black and white, slightly yellowed with age. It showed a nun in traditional habit, standing in front of a wall of books. The woman's face was sharp, intelligent, with dark eyes that seemed to follow the viewer. Maya picked up the photo with trembling fingers. On the back, in spidery handwriting, Sister Marguerite Fontaine. Head librarian, 1935 to 1943. The books remember everything. Below that, in fresher ink that looked suspiciously red, "You're next." "How did you get this?" Maya asked the empty air. No answer. When she looked around, she was alone on the 4th floor. But the books that had fallen from the shelves were gone. Every volume was back in its proper place, as if the supernatural tantrum had never happened. Maya's hands shook as she gathered her research materials. She'd been investigating the library's ghost stories for her thesis, but now she was living one. The smart thing would be to pack up, change her thesis topic, and pretend none of this had happened. But Maya Chen had never been smart about letting mysteries go. Growing up, she'd been the kid who insisted on checking under beds and in closets, not to chase away monsters but to understand them. Her parents had called it morbid curiosity. Her therapist had called it a coping mechanism for anxiety. Maya called it being thorough. She photographed the image of Sister Marguerite with her phone, then slipped the original photo into her backpack. Whatever was happening here, it connected to the nun who died surrounded by books 78 years ago. The next morning, Maya headed to the university archives in the basement of the administration building. If she was going to be hunted by a ghost, she wanted to know everything about her supernatural stalker. The archives were run by Dr. Elizabeth Murphy, a woman in her 60s who worked at St. Francis Xavier for over 30 years. She had the kind of face that had seen everything and wasn't too easily surprised. "You re-interested in the old convent fire?" Dr. Murphy asked, pulling thick folders from climate-controlled storage. "Most students who research that topic don't stick with it very long." "Why not? They find other subjects more comfortable." Dr. Murphy spread photographs across the research table. Images of the original convent building, group photos of nuns, architectural plans. Maya recognized the sharp-featured face of Sister Marguerite in several group shots. "She was brilliant," Dr. Murphy said, following Maya's gaze. "Spoke 6 languages, had advanced degrees in theology and library science. The convent's collection was her life's work." "What kind of collection?" "Religious texts, historical documents, illuminated manuscripts. Some quite rare. Sister Marguerite had contacts throughout Europe who sent her books that would have been destroyed during the war." Maya studied a photograph of the convent's library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with leather-bound volumes. Sister Marguerite stood in the center, surrounded by her precious books like a queen in her court. "The fire started in the basement," Dr. Murphy continued, "but it spread faster than anyone expected. Most of the nuns escaped, but Sister Marguerite refused to leave without securing the most valuable manuscripts. She died trying to save books?" "That's the official story." Dr. Murphy's tone suggested she had doubts. "But there were irregularities in the investigation." "What kind of irregularities?" Dr. Murphy hesitated, then pulled out a file marked "Confidential, Administrative Use Only." "I probably shouldn't to show you this," she said, "but you seem like the type who won to give up until you know the truth." The file contained police reports, witness statements, and photographs from the fire scene. Maya's stomach churned as she read through the details. Sister Marguerite's body had been found in the convent's rare book vault, as Maya already knew. But according to witness statements, she'd been seen leaving the building with other evacuees. Multiple nuns swore they watched her exit safely. So how had she ended up back inside? "There's more," Dr. Murphy said quietly. 3 other nuns died that night, all in the same room as Sister Marguerite. The official cause of death for all 4 was smoke inhalation, but she showed Maya the autopsy photographs. Maya had to cover her mouth to keep from vomiting. The 3 other nuns had been found with their faces buried in open books, like they'd been reading when they died, but their mouths and throats were packed with paper. Not just any paper, pages that had been torn from the books they'd been found with. "They suffocated on the pages," Maya whispered. "The coroner ruled it accidental, said they must have inhaled paper fragments when the books caught fire." "But look at this." Dr. Murphy pointed to details in the photographs. The books the nuns had been found with weren't burned. They were pristine, as if protected by some invisible barrier. And the pages stuffed into the women's mouths weren't fragments. They were whole sheets, torn out carefully and folded. Someone fed them the pages, Maya realized. "Or something," Dr. Murphy said darkly. Maya spent the rest of the day reading through every document in the file. A picture gradually emerged of Sister Marguerite Fontaine as someone obsessed with preserving knowledge to an unhealthy degree. Her personal journals, recovered from her room, revealed a woman who had begun to view books as living things that needed protection from the ignorant masses. In her final entries, written just days before the fire, Sister Marguerite had become convinced that the other nuns were planning to sell or destroy parts of the collection to raise money for the convent's struggling finances. They don't understand, she written. Books are not mere objects. They contain the souls of everyone who has ever read them. To destroy a book is to commit murder. The final entry, dated the morning of the fire, was even more disturbing. I have found a way to preserve the collection forever. The books have shown me. Tonight, we become one. Maya left the archives feeling sick. She started this research looking for a simple ghost story for her thesis. Instead, she uncovered what looked like a mass murder disguised as an accident. But she still didn't understand the connection to the modern library. The original convent building had been completely destroyed. The current library had been built on the same site, but it was an entirely different structure. That night, Maya returned to the library with new questions. She armed herself with salt, iron nails, and a crucifix borrowed from the campus chapel. If she was dealing with a Catholic ghost, traditional protective measures might work. The library after hours felt different now that she knew its history. Every shadow could hide a figure in religious robes. Every creak could be footsteps on stairs that no longer existed. Maya made her way to the 4th floor, where the supernatural activity seemed strongest. The space was devoted to religious studies and historical archives, subjects that would have interested Sister Marguerite. She set up her laptop at the same desk where she hidden the night before. But instead of researching, she opened a word processor and began typing. Sister Marguerite, she wrote, I know you. We're here. I know what happened to you and the other nuns. I want to help. The temperature in the library dropped 10 degrees. Books began sliding off shelves, but slowly this time. Not the violent tantrum from the previous night. The volumes arranged themselves in neat piles around Maya's desk, like offerings. She picked up the nearest book, The Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius. It fell open to a page with a handwritten note in the margin. Knowledge is eternal. Flesh is temporary. Another book opened itself. Medieval manuscript illumination. A photograph had been tucked between the pages. It showed the interior of the old convent library, but the image was wrong somehow. The books on the shelves seemed to pulse with their own light. Maya photographed everything with her phone. The academic in her was fascinated even as the human in her grew more terrified. What do you want? She asked aloud. The answer came not as a voice, but as words appearing on her laptop screen. Her fingers weren't moving, but letters formed across the document. I want what was taken from me. My collection, my purpose, my sisters who died protecting the sacred knowledge. They dead. Maya typed back. You're all dead. It's been 78 years. Death is just another form of cataloging. We have been reorganized, not destroyed. Maya felt something brush against her shoulder. She turned to see a transparent figure standing behind her chair. Sister Marguerite looked exactly like her photographs, but translucent and flickering like a bad television signal. You've been studying us, the ghost said. Learning our story. That makes you part of the collection now. I don't understand. Sister Marguerite smiled, revealing teeth made of paper edges. Every book that has ever been read becomes part of the reader. Every story changes the person who hears it. You absorbed so much knowledge about us that we now exist partially inside your mind. Maya tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't obey. Looking down, she saw her feet had sunk into the library carpet as if it were quicksand. The building may be new, Sister Marguerite continued, but it was built on consecrated ground. Ground that remembers. The books here are connected to the books that burned. Knowledge seeks knowledge. Like calls to like. More transparent figures began materializing around Maya's desk. The other nuns who died in the fire. Their faces were peaceful, but their mouths moved constantly, as if they were reading aloud from invisible texts. We've been patient, Sister Marguerite said, waiting for someone who truly understood the value of preserved knowledge. Someone who would join us willingly. I never said I wanted to join you. But you do. Sister Marguerite gestured to Maya's laptop screen. Look at your search history. Look at how much time you spend in libraries and archives. Look at how you prefer books to people, research to relationships. Maya's screen filled with her browser history from the past months. Hundreds of searches about ghosts, haunted libraries, supernatural phenomena. Hours spent in archives and rare book collections. Her social media showed a pattern of canceled plans and ignored messages from friends. "You are already more ghost than human," Sister Marguerite observed gently. We're simply offering to make it official." The other nuns stepped closer, and Maya could see they carried books. But these weren't the normal books. The pages moved on their own, text flowing and changing like living things. Words crawled across the paper like insects. "These are the true books," Sister Marguerite explained. "Books that contain not just information, but the essence of everyone who has ever read them. They hunger for new knowledge, new experiences, new souls to digest." One of the nuns opened her book directly in front of Maya's face. The pages smelled like old parchment and something else, something organic and wrong. The text on the page was written in what looked at first like Latin, but as Maya stared at it, the words began moving, rearranging themselves into English. Maya Chen, age 21, born October 15th in Portland General Hospital. First word was book. Learned to read at age 3. Preferred fairy tales to lullabies. Mother remarried when she was 13. Father moved to Seattle and calls twice a month. First kiss was with David Morrison behind the school library when she was 15. Loses herself in research because reality is too messy and unpredictable. Fears dying without leaving something permanent behind. "Stop," Maya whispered, but the book continued cataloging her life in terrible detail. Her embarrassing moments, her secret fears, her private thoughts that she never shared with anyone. "Knowledge wants to be preserved," Sister Marguerite said. "Your life, your memories, your experiences, they are too valuable to let fade away when your body dies. The books will keep you forever." Maya felt pages pressing against her face. Thin, dry paper that tasted like dust and old glue. The books were trying to feed on her, to absorb her memories and experiences like they had with the nuns decades ago. But something in Maya rebelled against the idea of becoming just another catalog collection. She spent her life studying other people's stories, but she never lived one of her own. "No," she said, spitting out paper fragments. "I am not done yet." She grabbed the crucifix from her backpack and held it up. Sister Marguerite stepped back, but she was smiling. "Holy symbols only work if you truly believe," the ghost said. "Do you believe, Maya? Or are you just going through scholarly motions?" Maya realized the nun was right. She brought the crucifix as an academic exercise, not from any real faith. It was just another research tool. But she did believe in something else. "I believe stories should be shared, not hoarded," Maya said. "I believe knowledge belongs to the living, not trapped with the dead." She opened her laptop and began typing rapidly, uploading all her research about the convent fire to every platform she could think of. Social media, academic databases, horror forums, local news sites. "What are you doing?" Sister Marguerite demanded. "Setting you free," Maya replied. "You've been trapped here for 78 years because nobody knew the real story. But now everyone will know. You want to be secret anymore." The ghost, this expression shifted from confident to furious. "You re-destroying our peace, our sanctuary. You not at peace," Maya shot back. "You re-imprisoned. All of you, trapped by your obsession with preserving knowledge instead of sharing it." She kept typing, posting the photographs, the police reports, the witness statements. Everything Dr. Murphy had shown her and more. The story of Sister Marguerite Fontaine and the Hungry books spread across the internet at digital speed. The transparent nuns began flickering more rapidly, their forms becoming unstable. "The collection," Sister Marguerite gasped. "You re-scattering the collection?" "I'm doing what librarians are supposed to do," Maya said. "Making information accessible to everyone." Her feet came free from the carpet as the ghost's hold on her weakened. The supernatural books were fading too, their hungry pages losing cohesion. But Sister Marguerite made one last desperate grab for her. Paper pages whirled through the air like a tornado, trying to envelope Maya and drag her into the collection. Maya ran. She sprinted through the library, ghost books flying after her like attack birds. The pages cut at her arms and face, trying to latch onto her skin and burrow inside. Behind her, Sister Marguerite's voice rose to a shriek of rage. "You cannot escape knowledge. Once learned, it becomes part of you forever. Maya reached the main entrance and slammed into the doors. They were locked, of course. The library was closed, but the emergency exit would set off alarms. And right now she wanted nothing more than to bring security guards and bright lights into this supernatural nightmare. She hit the emergency bar and stumbled out into the cool Nova Scotia night. Alarms blared behind her, but she kept running until she reached her dorm room. The next morning, Maya woke up to find her phone exploded with notifications. Her posts about the convent fire had gone viral. News outlets were picking up the story. Paranormal investigators were requesting interviews. But when she tried to access her research files, they were gone. Every document, every photograph, every note about Sister Marguerite had vanished from her laptop and phone. Maya rushed to the archives building, but Dr. Murphy met her at the door with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, dear, the older woman said, but we had a break-in last night. Someone stole all the files related to the 1943 fire. Very professional job. They knew exactly which documents to take. It's impossible, Maya said. I posted everything online. There are copies. She pulled out her phone to show Dr. Murphy the viral posts, but her social media accounts showed nothing. The posts had vanished as if they never existed. Are you feeling all right? Dr. Murphy asked with concern. You look like you haven't slept. Maya stared at her phone in disbelief. Had she imagined posting the research? Had the entire supernatural encounter been some kind of stress-induced hallucination? But when she rolled up her sleeves, she could see thin paper cuts covering her arms. Cuts that formed patterns, like text written in a language she couldn't read. That afternoon, Maya returned to the library with a mixture of dread and determination. She had to know if Sister Marguerite was still there, still waiting. The fourth floor was quiet and normal. Students studied at the desks where Maya had faced down a supernatural librarian. Books sat peacefully on their shelves. But when Maya approached the religious studies section, she found a new book that hadn't been there before. The Spiritual Practices of Maritime Convents, read the title. A Personal Investigation by M. Chen. Maya opened the book with trembling hands. It was filled with her research about Sister Marguerite, written in her own handwriting. Every detail she uncovered, every photograph she taken, every terrifying moment from the previous night. But it was written as fiction, a horror story about a student who investigated a haunted library and discovered the truth about a murderous nun. On the final page, in handwriting that definitely wasn't hers, someone had written, "Knowledge belongs to those who preserve it. Thank you for your contribution to the collection." MF. Maya slammed the book shut and looked around wildly. The other students in the library continued studying, oblivious to her panic. She tried to check the book out, but when she brought it to the circulation desk, the librarian frowned at the barcode. "That's odd," the young man said. "This book isn't in our system. According to our records, it doesn't exist." "But it's right here," Maya said, holding up the volume. The librarian looked at her with concern. "Miss, you're not holding anything." Maya looked down at her hands. They were empty. She returned to the religious studies section, but the book was gone. In its place was a gap between other volumes, just wide enough for one missing book. That night, Maya packed her bags and requested a transfer to a different university. She told the administration she had a family emergency back in Oregon. They were understanding and processed the paperwork quickly. But as she loaded her car to leave St. Francis Xavier, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every library window seemed to hide a figure in religious robes. Every shadow looked like it contained hungry books waiting to feed. She drove straight through to Portland without stopping, afraid that if she slept, she might wake up back in the library with pages pressed against her face. Maya finished her degree at Portland State University, writing her senior thesis on entirely secular historical topics. She avoided libraries when possible, preferring to buy books online and read them in coffee shops surrounded by other people. But sometimes, when she was reading alone, she'd catch glimpses of text that wasn't there. Words crawling across pages like insects. Sentences that rearranged themselves when she wasn't looking directly at them. And sometimes, late at night, she'd hear the sound of books falling off shelves in rooms that contained no books at all. Maya told herself it was just her imagination, trauma from the stress of her final year in college. She saw a therapist who diagnosed her with anxiety and prescribed meditation techniques. The paper cuts on her arms faded to thin white scars that looked almost like text in a language she couldn't read. 5 years later, Maya worked as a research assistant at a medical college in Seattle. She deliberately chosen a field far from library science or religious studies. Science was clean, rational, based on observable facts. But even in the medical library, she sometimes felt watched. Books would be moved when she returned from lunch breaks. Research materials would vanish and reappear in different locations. And once, while working late on a Friday evening, she found a handwritten note tucked into a medical journal. Distance is just another way of cataloging. We are always with our collection. MF. Maya had thrown the note away immediately, but she never forgot the message. She began to understand that her encounter with Sister Marguerite had changed her in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. The ghost had been right about one thing. Once knowledge was absorbed, it became part of the person who learned it. Maya carried the hungry books inside her now. She was a living library of supernatural experience, walking through the world with stories that wanted to be preserved and shared. But she also learned something Sister Marguerite had forgotten in her obsession with preservation. Stories were meant to be passed on, not hoarded. Knowledge grew when it was shared, not when it was locked away. So Maya began to write. She started with short pieces posted anonymously on horror forums, stories about haunted libraries, supernatural nuns, books that fed on human memories. She disguised her experience as fiction, but every detail was true. The stories found their audience. Readers shared them, adapted them, built on them. The tale of Sister Marguerite Fontaine spread across the internet in hundreds of versions, each one slightly different but carrying the core truth. And slowly, Maya began to feel lighter. Each story she shared was like releasing a page from the hungry books inside her. The supernatural weight that had pressed on her since St. Francis Xavier gradually lifted. But she was careful never to tell the complete truth. Some knowledge was too dangerous to share in its pure form. The real details of how to contact Sister Marguerite, how to access the supernatural library, how to feed the hungry books, those secrets stayed locked in Maya's mind. Because she learned that the most important lesson any librarian could teach was knowing what information to preserve and what to let fade away. 10 years after leaving Nova Scotia, Maya received an email from Dr. Elizabeth Murphy. The subject line read, "You might find this interesting." The email contained a single newspaper clipping from the Antigonish casket, dated 3 days earlier. Mysterious fire destroys University Library Antigonish. The Angus L. MacDonald Library at St. Francis Xavier University was completely destroyed by fire early Tuesday morning. Officials say the blaze appears to have started on the 4th floor in the religious studies section. No injuries were reported, as the building was empty at the time. However, investigators are puzzled by several aspects of the fire. Security cameras show no signs of an intruder, and there was no electrical fault or other obvious cause for the blaze. Most mysteriously, while the building was completely gutted, firefighters report that many books in the religious studies collection were found intact and unburned, despite being at the center of the fire. The university plans to rebuild on the same site. Construction is expected to begin next year. Maya stared at the clipping for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and began typing a news story. Because she understood now that some hungers could never be fully satisfied, only managed. The books would always be looking for new readers, new minds to catalog and preserve. But as long as people like Maya kept sharing the stories, kept the knowledge moving and growing instead of stagnant and hoarded, maybe that hunger could be channeled into something less destructive. Maybe the ghost of Sister Marguerite Fontaine could finally learn the difference between preserving knowledge and imprisoning it. Maya posted her new story online that night. It spread quickly, as her stories always did. Readers in Canada picked it up, shared it, added their own details. Within a week, someone in Antigonish had posted a comment, "My cousin works construction. Says they found something weird in the library ruins. A vault in the basement that wasn't on any building plans. Completely untouched by the fire, filled with books that looked like they were from the 1940s. Maya smiled as she read the comment. The collection was still out there, still waiting. But now it was public knowledge instead of secret horror. The stories would serve as both warning and protection for future investigators. She opened a new document and began her next tale. After all, the books were always hungry for new readers, and Maya Chen had learned to feed them stories instead of souls. But late at night, when she worked alone in her apartment, Maya sometimes caught glimpses of a familiar figure in her peripheral vision. A woman in religious robes, standing by the bookshelf, watching with eyes that held both fury and grudging respect. The collection grows, Sister Marguerite would whisper when the apartment was dark and quiet. Every story you tell adds to our number. Every reader becomes part of the library. Maya would look up from her keyboard, but the ghost was never there when she turned directly. Still, she kept writing, because she realized that the only way to truly defeat a hungry book was to feed it something better than fear. She fed it hope. She fed it the possibility that knowledge could heal instead of harm, that stories could free instead of imprison, that even the angriest ghosts might someday find peace through understanding rather than possession. And sometimes, just sometimes, Maya thought she saw Sister Marguerite smile before fading back into the shadows between the shelves. The books were still hungry, but now they had better things to feast on than human souls. Story 5. Snow Apocalypse in the Rockies. The power died at 3:17 a.m. Sarah Chen's laptop screen went black, leaving her staring at her own reflection in the window of the Fairmont Banff Hotel. Outside, snow fell like ash from a dying world. She had come here to write. A freelance journalist from Denver, chasing a story about climate change in the Canadian Rockies. Instead, she found herself trapped in what locals were calling the worst blizzard in 50 years. The kind of supernatural weather event that made old-timers whisper about ancient curses. The backup generator kicked in, but the lights flickered like dying fireflies. Sarah grabbed her phone. No signal. The storm had severed all communication with the outside world. Classic horror movie setup, she thought, trying to calm her nerves with dark humor. Room 214 felt smaller now. The walls seemed to press inward with each gust of wind that rattled the windows. She wrapped herself in the hotel bathrobe and moved to the glass, pressing her palm against the cold surface. That's when she saw them. 3 figures stood in the courtyard below, perfectly still in the swirling snow. They wore white suits that seemed to blend with the storm itself. No movement, no breath clouds, just standing there like mannequins someone had forgotten to bring inside. Sarah blinked hard. When she looked again, they were gone. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She told herself it was the storm playing tricks, shadows and wind creating shapes that weren't really there. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Stories of skinwalkers that could take any form, creatures that hunted in the spaces between reality and nightmare. A scream echoed through the hotel corridors. Sarah grabbed her jacket and rushed into the hallway. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. Other guests had emerged from their rooms, faces pale and confused. A woman in her 60s clutched her husband's arm. "Did you hear that?" the woman whispered. "Room 237, said a man in a business suit. "That's where it came from." They moved as a group down the carpet-muffled hallway. The scream didn't come again, but something else did. A sound like fingernails dragging across glass, coming from inside the walls themselves. The door to 237 stood slightly open. Yellow light spilled into the corridor like infected blood. Sarah pushed past the others and peered inside. The room was empty, but the window was wide open, snow blowing across expensive furniture. The bed was unmade, covers thrown back as if someone had left in a hurry. Or been taken. "Marcus," the elderly woman called out. "Marcus Wilson was staying here. He is with our tour group." Sarah stepped into the room. Her breath came out in visible puffs now. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees. On the nightstand, she found a piece of hotel stationery with words scrawled in shaking handwriting. "They dawn to like warmth." "Turn off the lights," the business suit man read over her shoulder. "What the hell does that mean?" Before Sarah could answer, the lights went out completely. Emergency power died with a mechanical wheeze. The hotel plunged into absolute darkness, the kind of black that made you question if your eyes were even open. Someone whimpered. Footsteps shuffled on carpet. Sarah fumbled for her phone, his flashlight, but her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped it. The beam cut through darkness like a white knife. It revealed faces frozen in terror, eyes wide and searching. But at the edge of the light, something else moved. A shadow that seemed thicker than the others, flowing along the wall like liquid mercury. "Everyone stay calm," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to get to the lobby. Find other people." They moved in a tight group, her phone light leading the way. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors seeming to multiply in the darkness. The carpet beneath their feet felt wet, though Sarah couldn't see any water. A door creaked open behind them. They turned as one, but Sarah's light revealed only empty space. Yet the feeling of being watched crawled up her spine like cold fingers. Something was following them, staying just outside the light's reach. The elevator doors stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow them. Sarah shook her head. Stairs. We take the stairs. The stairwell echoed with their footsteps, but other sounds echoed too. Whispers in a language that wasn't quite human. Scratching noises from above and below. The American horror stories her college friends used to tell around campfires suddenly felt very real. They reached the lobby to find chaos. Guests huddled in groups around flickering candles the hotel staff had provided. The front desk clerk, a young man with frightened eyes, waved them over. Thank God, he said. We've been trying to do a head count. Is everyone from the fourth floor accounted for? Marcus Wilson is missing, the elderly woman said. Room 237. The clerk, his face went white. That's the third one tonight. Third one? Sarah grabbed his arm. What do you mean third one? Mrs. Patterson from 118. Gone about an hour ago. And the Johnson kid from 203. Both rooms found empty, windows open. Just like he swallowed hard, just like the others. Others? This has happened before. Every time we get a storm like this, people disappear. They find footprints in the snow leading into the forest, but never coming back. Sarah felt the creepypasta stories she'd read online suddenly gain weight, becoming real and terrifying. The pattern was too familiar. Too much like the urban legends that spread across internet forums like digital wildfire. A child started crying somewhere in the darkness. The sound echoed off the high lobby ceiling, multiplying until it seemed like dozens of children were weeping. But when Sarah turned her light toward the sound, she saw only adults with strained faces. We need to stay together, she said. Whatever is happening, it seems to target people who are alone. An older man with a gray beard nodded. Like wolves, they separate the weak from the herd. These errand to wolves, Sarah muttered, thinking of the figures she'd seen in the snow. The unnatural stillness, the way they vanish without leaving so much as a footprint. The front doors burst open with a sound like thunder. Wind and snow exploded into the lobby, extinguishing half the candles. In the swirling white chaos, shapes moved. Tall figures in pale suits, their faces hidden by hoods that seemed to absorb light itself. Guests screamed and scattered. Sarah's phone lights swept across the scene, catching glimpses of impossible things. The figures moved without walking, gliding across the floor like ice across water. Where they passed, the temperature dropped so quickly that breath turned to frost midair. One of them stopped directly in front of Sarah. Up close, she could see there was nothing under the hood. No face, no head, just empty space filled with swirling snow and darkness. It reached toward her with fingers made of icicles. Sarah ran. She sprinted toward the back of the hotel, her phone light bouncing wildly. Behind her, screams turned to silence in a way that made her stomach clench with dread. The supernatural entities were taking people, one by one, and there was nowhere to hide. The kitchen doors swung shut behind her. Sarah found herself among steel counters and industrial ovens, all cold and lifeless. She tried to control her breathing, listening for sounds of pursuit. Nothing. The silence was worse than screaming. She crept toward the back exit, hoping to find another way out. But the door was frozen solid, ice covering the handle like a crystal glove. Through the window, she could see the loading dock buried under 10 feet of snow. A whisper came from the walk-in freezer. Sarah, her blood turned to slush in her veins. Nobody here knew her name. She deregistered under a fake identity for the story she was chasing. The freezer door stood slightly open, mist spilling out like ghost breath. Against every instinct, Sarah approached. Her light revealed hanging meat and frozen vegetables, but in the back corner, something else waited. Marcus Wilson sat propped against the wall, his skin blue-white with frostbite. His eyes were open but filmed with ice. In his frozen hands, he held another note. They were not taking us. They were making us like them. The cold is spreading. It will reach Denver, then Chicago, then everywhere. The only way to stop it is to become it. Sarah's hands trembled as she read. The American horror she'd grown up with, vampires, zombies, ghosts, suddenly seemed quaint compared to this. This was something older, something that existed in the spaces between human understanding. A hand fell on her shoulder. She spun around to find the hotel clerk, but something was wrong with his face. Frost covered his eyebrows and lips. His breath came out in clouds so thick they obscured his features. It's not so bad, he said, his voice like wind through icicles. The cold, once he stopped fighting it, Sarah backed away, but he followed, moving with that same unnatural glide she'd seen in the lobby. You, writer, he continued. You can tell the story. Help others understand. The storm, ISN. T. Random. Sarah. It's recruitment. She turned and ran deeper into the kitchen, past prep stations and dish pits. The clerk. His laughter followed her, getting further away but never quite fading. She found a service elevator and pressed the button frantically. The doors opened to reveal Mrs. Patterson from room 118. The elderly woman, his skin had turned translucent, veins visible beneath like blue rivers. She smiled with lips that cracked like frozen glass. Going up, dear. Sarah stumbled backward, her phone light playing across more transformed faces. The missing guests filled the elevator, all changed by whatever force had taken them. Their eyes reflected her light like animals in the night. She ran for the main stairs, taking them 3 at a time. Behind her, footsteps echoed, too many footsteps from too many feet. The transformed guests followed, their breathing synchronized into a sound like wind through a cemetery. The second floor, the third, Sarah, its lungs burned in the frigid air. The fourth floor hallway stretched before her, emergency lighting flickering like dying stars. Room 214, her room. If she could barricade herself inside, maybe she could wait out the storm. Maybe help would come with daylight. She slammed the door behind her and dragged the dresser in front of it. Outside, the wind had stopped. Complete silence pressed against the windows like a living thing. Sarah checked her phone. Still no signal, but she had an idea. She opened her voice recorder app and began to speak. This is Sarah Chen, freelance journalist. If anyone finds this recording, know that something happened at the Fairmont Banff Hotel during the blizzard of... What is today? This date. I've lost track. The storm, ISN. T. Natural. There are things in it. Things that take people and change them. A gentle knock came from the door. Polite, almost friendly. Sarah, the voice belonged to her editor back in Denver. Sarah, are you in there? We come to get you. Her blood froze. Tom hadn't known where she was going. She kept the assignment secret, chasing rumors and climate data without telling anyone her exact location. The helicopter is waiting. Tom, his voice continued. But we need to leave now. The storm is getting worse. Sarah pressed herself against the far wall. Through the window, she could see the courtyard below. No helicopter, no rescue team, just those same 3 figures in white suits, standing motionless in the snow. I know you're scared, Tom said. But we're here to help. Just open the door. The doorknob rattled. Sarah realized she hadn't locked it. The dresser was the only thing holding them back. Slowly, the heavy furniture began to slide across the floor. She looked around desperately. The bathroom had no windows. The closet was too small to hide in. Her only option was the window itself. Sarah grabbed the desk chair and hurled it at the glass. The window exploded outward in a shower of crystalline shards. Wind and snow roared into the room like hungry ghosts. 4 stories down, snowdrifts that might cushion her fall or bury her alive. The dresser scraped across the floor with finality. The door swung open. Tom stepped inside, but his face was wrong. Features shifted like melting wax, revealing something else underneath. Something that had never been human. You can run from winter, Sarah. And winter is everywhere now. Behind him, the other transformed guests filled the doorway. Their faces had begun to merge into the same featureless masks she'd seen in the courtyard. Ice crystals grew from their skin like beautiful, deadly flowers. Sarah climbed onto the windowsill. Wind tried to tear her from the ledge, snow stinging her face like angry wasps. The story needs to be told, the thing wearing Tom, his voice said. You, journalist, help us spread the word. Help us bring the cold to everyone. She looked down at the snow-covered ground, then at the forest beyond, where footprints led into darkness but never came back. In the distance, she could see lights, maybe another hotel, maybe a town where people were still human. Sarah jumped. The fall lasted forever and no time at all. Snow rushed up to meet her, soft and welcoming and cold as death itself. She hit the drift and kept going down into white that filled her mouth and nose and lungs. When she finally stopped sinking, everything was muffled and still. Above her, a tunnel of disturbed snow showed how far she'd fallen. At the top, dark shapes moved across the broken window. Sarah clawed her way to the surface, gasping and shivering. Her phone had survived the fall, its light casting eerie shadows across the courtyard. The 3 figures in white suits were gone, but footprints surrounded her in the snow. Dozens of them, all leading toward the forest. She followed them because she had no choice. The hotel behind her was no longer safe, and the storm showed no signs of ending. Each step took her further from civilization and deeper into something that had no name in any human language. The trees closed around her like a frozen cathedral. Snow fell heavier here, muffling all sound except her own labored breathing. The footprints led deeper into the woods, but she noticed something disturbing. The prints were changing shape as she followed them, becoming less human with each passing yard. By the time she reached the clearing, they looked more like paw prints, or claw marks. In the center of the clearing stood a structure that hurt to look at directly. Not a building, exactly, but a space where the snow had formed itself into walls and arches that defied physics. Ice sculptures that moved when she wasn't looking directly at them. Figures moved inside the structure. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all wearing those same white suits that seemed to be made of snow itself. Sarah raised her phone to record, but the screen showed only static. The cold was affecting the electronics, or maybe something else was interfering. Some force that didn't want this place documented. One of the figures turned toward her. Even from a distance, she could feel its attention like frost spreading across her skin. It raised a hand that might have been a greeting or a summons. Other figures began to turn. Soon, every face in the clearing was pointed in her direction, though she couldn't see features under their hoods. Sarah ran. She crashed through underbrush and low-hanging branches, her phone light bouncing wildly. Behind her, she could hear them following. Not running, but gliding through the snow with that same impossible grace she'd seen in the hotel. The scary thing wasn't their speed, it was their patience. They weren't chasing her like predators. They were herding her like farmers guiding livestock. She broke through the tree line into another clearing, this one natural. In the center, a small cabin sat dark and abandoned. Smoke should have been rising from the chimney, but the roof was buried under snow that looked like it had been there for decades. The door stood open. Sarah approached carefully, phone light revealing a simple interior. One room with a stone fireplace, a wooden table, and shelves lined with canned goods that were frozen solid. On the table, she found a journal bound in leather. The entries were dated, but the years were wrong. The most recent was from 1847. The handwriting was different for each entry, as if multiple people had used the same book. March 15, 1847, the Wendigo came with the storm. Took my brother first, then the children. We barricaded ourselves in the trading post, but it found ways inside. Not through doors or windows, through the cold itself. June 3, 1923, they were not Wendigo. Something else, something older. The ice speaks to them, tells them things. They tried to tell me, but I kept the fire burning. Fire keeps them back, but only if you believe it will work. December 25, 1969, Christmas Day, and no presents except death. The things in the snowsuits aren't human anymore. Were they ever? Found footprints that led in circles for miles. They were playing games with us. Hunting games. The final entry was recent. Too recent. January 15, 2025, the hotel is perfect. All those people, all that warmth. I'll never expect it. The storm will bring us what we need. New faces, new voices. The cold is hungry and we are its mouth. Sarah's hands shook as she read. The handwriting was familiar. She'd seen it before, on hotel registration forms and guest complaints. The front desk clerk. How long had he been working at the hotel? How long had this been planned? A shadow fell across the doorway. Sarah looked up to see one of the suited figures standing there, snow swirling around it like a personal blizzard. Up close, she could see that the suit wasn't clothing at all. It was skin. White, translucent skin that moved and shifted like living frost. You read the book, it said in a voice like breaking glass. Now you understand. Understand what? Sarah backed toward the fireplace, though no fire burned there. We're not monsters. We re-evolution. Humanity adapted to warmth, to comfort, to softness. But the cold is stronger. The cold lasts longer. The cold will inherit everything when the sun grows dim. More figures filled the doorway. Sarah could see faces under their hoods now. Familiar faces. Marcus Wilson, Mrs. Patterson, the business suit man, all transformed, but still recognizably themselves. You have to fight it, Marcus said, his voice carrying harmonics that made her teeth ache. The cold doesn't hurt once you accept it, once you become it. Sarah felt warmth draining from her body just from being near them. Her breath came in shorter puffs. Ice crystals began forming on her eyelashes. The American horror stories got it wrong, Mrs. Patterson added. Vampires need blood. Zombies need flesh. But we need nothing except winter. And winter comes to everyone. Eventually, they moved closer, and Sarah noticed her phone light was dimming. Not the battery. The cold was affecting the LED itself. Soon she would be in complete darkness with these things. She remembered the journal entry. Fire keeps them back, but only if you believe it will work. Sarah grabbed matches from the mantel and struck one. The tiny flame seemed impossibly bright in the encroaching darkness. The figures paused, but didn't retreat. Belief, she whispered, then louder. I believe fire burns away the cold. I believe warmth defeats winter. I believe summer always returns. The match flame grew brighter. Or maybe it was her imagination. But the figures took a step back. Sarah lit another match before the first died, then another. She found newspaper and kindling by the fireplace and soon had a small fire crackling in the grate. Real warmth pushed back against the supernatural cold. The suited figures hissed like steam escaping from a radiator. Their forms began to waver, becoming less solid. Belief is temporary, Marcus said, his voice fainter now. But winter is eternal. I'll wait. It'll always wait. They melted backward into the snow, leaving only footprints that were already filling with fresh powder. Sarah fed the fire with furniture and pages from the journal. She would stay warm. She would believe in heat and light and the eventual return of spring. She would survive until help came. But as she sat by the flames, one thought kept returning. How many hotels were there in the mountains? How many isolated places where people gathered, trusting in human warmth to keep the darkness at bay? And how many front desk clerks were already waiting for the next storm? Outside, snow continued to fall. Not natural snow, but something with purpose and intelligence. Something that whispered in languages older than human speech. Sarah fed another piece of wood to the fire and tried not to listen to what the whispers were saying. She tried not to think about how much firewood was left. She tried not to notice that her breath was starting to show again, despite the flames. The fire was dying, and she was alone in the wilderness with things that had all the patience of winter itself. In the distance, she could hear the sound of helicopters. Rescue teams, maybe, or maybe just the wind playing tricks on her mind. The flames flickered lower, the whispers grew louder, and somewhere in the forest, footprints that led in circles for miles were being covered by fresh snow, waiting for the next lost soul to follow them into the cold, eternal dark. Story 6. Self-checkout that knows you. Welcome back, Pumpkin, the self-checkout machine said to Lisa in her grandmother's voice. Nobody had called her that name in 15 years. She stood frozen in the Walmart on Highway 71 in Arkansas, holding a box of cereal and a gallon of milk. The automated voice should have said, "Welcome," in that generic robot tone. Not her childhood nickname. Not in a voice that belonged to someone 6 feet underground. This was turning into one of those creepypasta stories people shared online. The kind that always happened to someone's cousin in a small town. Except Lisa was living it right now at 11:47 p.m. in the middle of nowhere. The scanner beeped. She hadn't touched anything. Please scan your next item, Pumpkin. I've been waiting to see what you're buying these days. Lisa looked around the store. Empty aisles, flickering fluorescent lights. One bored cashier reading a magazine at register 3. Nobody else paying attention to the supernatural horror unfolding at self-checkout station 4. She scanned the cereal. The screen displayed cornflakes minus $4.99 for 2 seconds. Then changed to the night you wet the bed at Sarah's sleepover minus $4.99. Her hands started shaking. She scanned the milk. Your first kiss with Tommy behind the bleachers minus $3.79. The camera above the scanner showed her on the small screen. But she wasn't alone. Shadow figures stood behind her. Tall, faceless. Getting closer with each item she scanned. Lisa spun around. The store was still empty. No shadows, no figures, just fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. She looked back at the screen. The shadows were touching her now. Their hands on her shoulders. Their faces pressed close to her neck. Dawn, to turn around again, Pumpkin, the machine said in her grandmother's voice. They don't like being seen directly. They prefer to watch from the spaces between spaces. This was American horror at its finest. The mundane turned evil. Shopping for groceries became a nightmare where machines knew secrets they shouldn't, Lisa tried to leave, but the scanner beeped again. Please scan your next item. You have more than cereal and milk in that cart, Dawn. Do you? She looked down. Her cart was full of items she hadn't picked up. a pregnancy test, a bottle of wine, a pack of cigarettes, a sympathy card. She didn't smoke, didn't drink, wasn't pregnant, didn't know anyone who had died recently. But the machine knew something she didn't. Scan the test first. Pumpkin. That is the most important one. Lisa, as hands moved without her permission. She picked up the pregnancy test. Scanned it. What you'll find out tomorrow morning minus $12.99. The screen flickered, showed her bathroom, her sink, a pregnancy test sitting on the counter with 2 pink lines. Impossible, Lisa whispered. Nothing is impossible when you shopping with family, her grandmother's voice said. I always knew things before they happened. Runs in the family. Pumpkin. The gift skips generations. Lisa scanned the wine. The bottle you'll need after the phone call minus $8.99. The cigarettes. What you'll start again when the stress hits minus $6.50. The sympathy card. For your mother's funeral next month minus $2.99. Each scan revealed a future she didn't want to know. A timeline of tragedy mapped out in Walmart prices. The shadows on the screen were everywhere now, surrounding her, reaching through the camera to touch the real world. We're here to help, her grandmother explained. Death has many assistants. They make sure everything happens on schedule. Lisa grabbed her purse and ran toward the exit, but the automatic doors wouldn't open. The sensors blinked red. Please finish your transaction. Pumpkin. You can leave with unpaid items. She was trapped in a supernatural Walmart where self-checkout machines predicted the future and ghosts helped with customer service. The bored cashier looked up from her magazine. Machine giving you trouble? Hon? It's talking to me, Lisa said, using my grandmother's voice. Showing me things that haven't happened yet. The cashier walked over, looked at the screen. It showed normal prices now. Cornflakes minus $4.99. Milk minus $3.79. No shadows, no predictions. Looks fine to me, the cashier said. These old machines glitch sometimes. Want me to ring you up the normal way? Lisa nodded, grabbed her original items, left the cart full of prophecies behind. But when the cashier scanned the cereal, her voice changed, became older, warmer. Hello, Pumpkin. Did you think changing lanes would help? The cashier's eyes went black. Her smile became too wide. The store remembers everyone who shops here. Every purchase, every secret, every future that's already been written. Lisa ran for the exit. This time the doors opened. She made it to her car, drove away from the Walmart as fast as she could. But in her rearview mirror, the store looked wrong. Too big, too bright, like it existed in more dimensions than it should. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Thank you for shopping with us, Pumpkin. Your receipt has been emailed. Please come back soon. She never got a receipt. Never gave them her email. Lisa drove straight home, threw away the cereal and milk. Tried to forget what happened. But the next morning, she took a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Congratulations, Pumpkin, her grandmother. This voice said through the speaker. The store is never wrong about these things. I'll see you again soon. You have more shopping to do. The line went dead. Lisa looked out her window. Across the street, a new Walmart was under construction. The sign read, opening soon, self-checkout only. The workers building it moved like shadows in the early morning light. And somewhere in Arkansas, the original store waited. Its machines learning new names, new secrets, new futures to sell at everyday low prices. The supernatural had gone corporate. Horror came with a receipt now, and every purchase was final.